Welcome to the Wire to Wire podcast. As always, it's me, your host Yusuf. Now, without further ado, let's just get right to it. So, guys, it's official. The Oklahoma City Thunder are the 2025 NBA champions. They defeated the Indiana Pacers in a 7-game series that was incredibly exciting. And both teams played with a level of desperation. In the first quarter, Indiana Pacers lost Tyrese Halliburton due to an Achilles injury, and he was a key player, and obviously he was their star player, although I would argue that he was their superstar, and he has made that leap into a superstar player, right? But ultimately, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they came out victorious and emerged as the champions. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander capped off what was already an incredible season with a championship, and he ended up becoming the finals MVP. He's had an historic playoff run, and he's joining elite company such as Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Shaquille O'Neal as the only players to win a scoring title, regular season MVP, and a finals MVP in the same season. I don't believe that there should be an asterisk on this championship due to Tyrese Halliburton getting injured in the first quarter. Now, obviously, we know that the Indiana Pacers would have been better with him playing versus him not being there. But we also have to keep in mind that the Oklahoma City Thunder, despite losing Game 1, they've managed to protect their home court throughout this series. So it's not a guarantee that even if Tyrese Halliburton would have been in the game, that the Pacers would have necessarily won. I don't believe that it would have been a foregone conclusion. I still think that it would have been a tough game, a back and forth game, and maybe they would have put up more of a fight. But we cannot definitively say that the Pacers would have beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I believe that there should not be an asterisk and that they won this championship fair and square. The Oklahoma City Thunder throughout these playoffs have shown that they have poise and they are able to overcome adversity. They won in 7 against the Denver Nuggets, who have championship experience and also had a pretty good team as well, right? And they also beat a formidable Minnesota Timberwolves team. So I don't believe that them getting to the championship was necessarily a cakewalk for them either. They played good competition. The Indiana Pacers were a tough, physical, resilient, and even talented team, and they also matched up very well against the Oklahoma City Thunder. There were moments in the finals where it appeared that the Pacers could have ultimately been the favorites. And I remember saying that in the last episode where I did when it was tied 2-2, that the Pacers looked like they were the favorites going into Game 5, right? And they were up 2-1 and they nearly won Game 4. And they were putting up a fight in Game 5. But ultimately, the OKC Thunder emerged victorious in Game 5. They dropped to Game 6. And as we saw, they won Game 7. But the Indiana Pacers, credit to them, they gave OKC a run for their money. And there's not enough good things that I can say about this Pacers team. They thoroughly impressed me all throughout their playoff run. But in the end, there could only be one winner. And this series proves that the NBA is going into a different direction than the years prior, where it was just about stacking the teams with a bunch of superstars and having more talent and ultimately winning off of your talent. This Oklahoma City Thunder team is well constructed and they have the potential to maybe even win more championships. They have a superstar player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he is surrounded by pieces that fit his game well and that also play their role very well. This OKC team reminds me of the way that the San Antonio Spurs were previously constructed. That Spurs team all throughout the 2000s as well as the early to mid 2010s, they were a team that were well coached. They had a quiet and humble superstar in Tim Duncan. They drafted guys like Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and developed them into superstar players. And they were key factors in that team winning multiple championships and constantly being in contention. And because they were homegrown and they were developed, it gave San Antonio the flexibility to be able to continue improving their team through the draft, as well as making trades to find pieces that constantly fit the nucleus that they had in place. And that is how they ended up with Kawhi Leonard, and they were prepared to make that transition from the Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili era into the Kawhi Leonard era. Now, obviously, we know it didn't quite work out that way, but they had it in place to be able to get to that point. And I can see the Oklahoma City Thunder doing something very similarly. They traded for a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They drafted a Chet Holmgren. They signed Alex Caruso, and they signed an undrafted Lou Dort. So they also have a stockpile of draft picks that give them the flexibility to either draft young talent to fill in the gaps that they need in case they ever run into any salary cap issues, or they can draft these players and develop them for the future so they can have a smooth transition from one era to the next, or they can use these draft picks to trade for pieces in the event that they decide that they want to be in a position to win now if necessary. So the Oklahoma City Thunder as a franchise are actually in a really good spot right now. And that's another reason why I liken them to the San Antonio Spurs. R.C. Buford, who is the GM for the Spurs, I'm not quite sure if he's still there or not, but I know he was very instrumental in building out those dynasty Spurs team. He was very competent in how he built their team, and he focused on the personality and character of players to determine who would be a good culture fit for the team. And I believe Sam Presti has consistently tried to keep the Oklahoma City Thunder competitive, from the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden era to eventually losing Harden, losing KD, but keeping Westbrook and trying to build around him, and then eventually bringing in guys like Paul George and Carmelo Anthony to be competitive in a super team era. And then when that didn't work, you just completely trade away Paul George, you rebuild the team, you bring in guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you sign Chris Paul to be a mentor for the young guys, and then you draft a guy like Chet Holmgren. So he made a lot of moves to get the team to where they are right now as NBA champions. He's always managed to adapt and keep the ship running despite the different obstacles that they faced. And now he finally has a championship to show for all of his efforts. Now think about it. It has been 13 years since the Oklahoma City Thunder had last played in the finals. So this moment right here was a long time coming for them. So by winning the championship, this would make the Oklahoma City Thunder the prohibitive favorites to win next year. But of course, that depends on the moves that get made during the offseason. However, now that they have this championship run under their belt, a lot of NBA teams are going to adapt their strategy and how they plan on defending this team, as well as the offensive schemes they're going to run when they're playing against this team. And that's the thing. When you have a breakout year unexpectedly, like the OKC Thunder just did, then you're going to get a lot of attention, and eventually teams are going to adapt and they're going to really start coming for you. The NBA is a copycat league. So there will be teams that are going to try to construct their team very similarly to how the OKC Thunder is currently constructed. But this is my hope, that the mid-range game makes a comeback into the NBA. If you look at how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been appearing so dominant, and at times he seems unstoppable, a lot of it is due to his skill set. Of course, we know that, but also it is the way in which he plays. The mid-range has become such a lost art that guys don't know how to incorporate it into their games, or they just flat out do not know how to defend it. I've said this before and I'm going to reiterate it because it's the truth. That's why he has been able to be so effective throughout the regular season, and even in the playoffs, he had a lot of moments where he continued to show that dominance, and he even had flashes of it throughout the NBA Finals, namely in that game 4 when it was a back and forth game, and even in that game 5. And also, it's not lost on me that the reason why the Indiana Pacers has been successful as well is because they have a good grasp of the mid-range game. If you look at a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, many of the game winners that he hit all throughout the playoffs have been mid-range jumpers or just him getting to the paint. That's a skill that he has in his repertoire. And also, if you look at a guy like Andrew Nembhard, he has a three-point shot, yes, but he also knows how to get to his spots and take mid-range shots, and he was very effective at it. So I hope this is something that starts to spread all throughout the league, and teams really start to incorporate this into their offense, and players start to incorporate this into their game. I think it is going to make the games more exciting. It's going to allow players to be more versatile, and I think it'll make the games be a lot more balanced. I think there is a misnomer. When people discuss the history of the game, people act as though threes were never taken. That's not the case. It's just that threes were frowned upon because they were largely viewed as low percentage shots. Right? So teams always preferred getting into the paint, playing with the back to the basket, or at the very least taking mid-range shots, which were proven to have a higher field goal percentage than just settling for threes. Now, obviously, times have changed, and a lot of it is due to the way Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors ran and structured their offense. But I think the NBA has an opportunity where they can have a balanced offense, where you can get to the paint, have a mid-range, and also still have a three-point shot and have guys who are effective from three, right? Back then, it used to be that each team, or at least winning teams, would aim to have a three-point specialist. But now, it is a requirement for guys who play all positions to be able to make the three-point shot. And I don't have a problem with that. I think it just shows how much the game has expanded in terms of the skill sets that are required to be able to compete. And I think to a degree, it adds some versatility. However, it doesn't make for a good viewing experience, and it doesn't make for necessarily good basketball to only have guys running up and down the court, shooting threes at all times. I think having a mix, having some versatility in the offensive schemes that are being run, I think would add that entertainment value, would bring back that competitive value, and would make the games even more exciting. Because I do think that the mid-range is a necessary element of the game. And I think that this playoffs, especially these finals that we just saw, which were very exciting and back and forth, it proves that. And I'll probably be doing another episode touching on Tyrese Halliburton's injury, but I think the reason, or at least part of the reason, why there is a huge proliferation of Achilles injuries taking place is largely because of the way the game is being played. Like I said earlier, that fast pace, it's really taxing. There is a lot more stop and go movements taking place. And all of that over time can cause wear and tear on the lower extremities of these players. So I think incorporating a mid-range game will do a good job of balancing all of that out. And I think the success of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander makes for a great case why it's an important skill set for a player to have in their repertoire. But congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder on winning a championship. It was definitely well deserved. It was hard fought and they earned it. They had a hell of a year, and it was great to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander cap off an incredible season with an NBA championship as well as Finals MVP. At this point, He is undoubtedly the best player in the NBA right now. He wears the crown. And I personally, and I'm not saying this as a hot take, right, or for shock value, I personally believe that he has become the greatest player in Oklahoma City Thunder history. But you know what? Let me not get into all that right now. Let me not open up that can of worms. I'll do an episode on this down the line and I'll further substantiate my claims on why I'm saying what I'm saying. And let me not get into all that right now. But that's all I got for you guys today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and to share with your people. You can also follow me and the podcast on social media. You can check out my books. All of the links will be in the description. Until next time.